Are you ready to hear how absolutely amazing Dragon Age Veilguard is gonna be? I bet you are.
Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today, and I hope all of you are doing absolutely fantastic. Today, we are diving into a plethora of Dragon Age the Veilguard news because, ladies and gentlemen, it's been popping off. We have voice cast details, we have information from Game Informer and their exclusive coverage of the game, so we're going to talk about
I'm sure Game Informer is gonna be great. I'm sure those articles are gonna hit hard.
companions and the like, romance, what's going on there, and we even have the man,
Everyone's buying gay. That's what's happening.
the myth, the legend himself, Mark Dara, father of Dragon Age in a manner of speaking, who has a lot of thoughts on his experience thus far with Dragon Age Veilguard that I found incredibly encouraging. But honestly, everything I've been reading about the game thus far has been very encouraging. I know many people don't align with that, but yeah, hey, you already knew how
Most people don't align with that for very obvious reasons, in fact.
I felt about the game well before this. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. If you're new here and you're into Dragon Age the Veilguard, consider subscribing. Let's see what we got going on in the top here. Fresh off the press, voice cast details. It starts here on the Dragon Age blog post where they write, Rook's voice, aka the main character for those that don't know, has been provided by iconic television, film, and video game personalities Alex Jordan, Cyberpunk, and The Amazing World of Gumball, Brioni Corrigan from Baldur's Gate 3 and Good Omens, Erika Ishii from Apex
Oh my god, I'm buying it already.
Legends and Destiny 2, and Jeff Berg from Battlefield 1 and NCIS. Meanwhile, all the companions have been detailed as well, with Ali Hills from Mass Effect 3 and Naruto returning to the fray. Ali's actually the voice of Liara in Mass Effect 3, so we're cooking already. We also have
I would much rather know the Naruto voice, but that's okay.
Ike Amadi, who is Davern, a bold and charming Grey Warden. We have Ji Young Han, who is going to be a creative and romantic veil jumper. Jessica Clark plays as Neve, who we actually
Oh boy. This is, you know what this character is gonna be? The literally, look at me, I'm on the spectrum gay character. 100%. Betting money already.
meet in the Dragon Age Veilguard gameplay reveal, a cynic fighting for a better future as a private detective and member of Tevinter's rebellious Shadow Dragons. Jin Meli is Tosh, a dragon hunter allied with the Lords of Fortune, who lives for adventure and doesn't mind taking risks. We have Nick Barain as Emmerich, a necromancer of Navarra's Mornwatch, who comes complete with a skeletal assistant voiced by Matthew Mercer, Manfred. We have Zach Mendez, who is Lucanus, a poised and pragmatic assassin who descends from the bloodline of the House of Crows, a criminal organization renowned throughout Thedas. And last but not least, we're excited to let you know Gareth David Lloyd is returning as Souls and Brian Bloom as Varric. So their original VAs are back. And they conclude this post by saying we have
Well, at least the original VAs are back, which is kind of nice.
many more people to introduce you to, including some returning characters, but we're not quite ready to reveal all those yet because, you know, story spoilers. So you may look at this list, and for those who are kind of tapped into the games industry, you may see just Matthew Mercer and maybe
Literally could not care less.
Ali Harrison be like, all right, I haven't heard of a lot of these names. For some people, that kind of brings them down a level. For me, this gets me more excited. Why is that? I love new voices in gaming. I do think there was a period of time, it's not as bad as it used to be, but I always remember there's this stretch of time where like every character in every game I played, and I say this, I don't love, by the way, because I think these are phenomenal talents, but like every character in every game was like Nolan North, Troy Baker, Robbie Damon, Erica Lindbeck, Jeremy Lay. Like it was always this same grab bag of voice actors and actresses, and understandably so, they're insanely talented, but it felt like less and less room was being created for new voices. So when I see a list of actors and actresses and I go, wow, I don't recognize any of these, I find it really exciting because to me, I think it says that.
Wait. So technically he's taking something that should be taken as a negative because these are a lot of new people who no one knows about or cares about. And then getting put on this absolutely ginormous IP, technically. And he's like, that shouldn't be a red flag. The fact that, no people of already acclaimed talent are here. Oh boy, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Yeah, maybe they're going to do a bad job and it's going to be horrible, but that's a good thing in general.
The voice directors have found a very particular style for a character, which can lead to a character just in their whole dynamic being completely different.
She's going to be annoying. You know that this is the writer's self-insert on how snarky they need to be. You know this is gonna be something amazing.
And also for me, it's like a weird thing with immersion. Like if I'm
My bet is that this character is a writer self-insert about the truth of the world and what the reality actually is and how logic functions. AKA, we're probably getting Fires in Space not Starfield tier, also Starfield tier technically, but Acolyte tier writing.
being completely different. And also for me, it's like a weird thing with immersion. Like if I'm hearing Troy Baker's voice across a dozen characters, I start to hear Troy Baker and not the character that's speaking.
If you're hearing Troy Baker between dozens of characters, that means that Troy Baker is a shitty voice actor, because voice actors are supposed to change their voices to fit a character. If you can tell that one guy is the voice of a huge number of characters that also are supposed to be different, then that's just a shitty voice actor.
So I do like that there's been a lighter touch on more well-known actors and actresses here. Not to down anyone on this list, but I do like that I didn't recognize anyone off the bat. Now, we do have more information here coming from this article on Game Informer titled A Deep Dive into BioWare's Companion Design Philosophy, where we learn more about these characters. Now, I read through the whole thing. A lot of it is particularly stuff that I saw people covering, but I didn't want to, just because a lot of it is like the opinions of the devs saying like, oh, we think this is the best cast yet. I'm like, well, you're trying to kind of market and sell the game. Of course you're going to say those sort of things. So what was actually new information here? Well, this one in particular I found very exciting. It's about what happens with the companions outside of combat. We already know in combat we have the ability wheel, very Mass Effect-like. You're going to connect in that way. Those powers are going to evolve. But then you see here outside of combat, Corinne Bush, the game director of Dragon Age of Veilguard, describes it saying, it's one of my favorite topics. I talked about the idea that these are fully realized characters, that they're very authentic and relatable. So outside of combat, what that means is they're going to have their own concerns.
Very authentic and relatable. Oh boy.
Fears, distractions, and indeed even their own sanctuaries, their own personal spaces. In our base of operations this time.
Ah, yes, you using the term personal space as not a place of living or a room that they per se have. Oh boy. This is not a red flag at all.
Our player hub, the lighthouse, each of the companions has their own room. And what I love about it is it becomes a reflection of who they are. The more time you spend with them as the game develops, as you work through their arc, their room and their personalities will evolve and flourish and become more.
All of the companions are going to have at least 5 dragon dildos in their rooms at full display.
Complete as they trust you more and you understand them better. I love this because I am a big fan of visual representation of your progression. This is a strange one, but I do think a bit of Persona 5 Royal and how as I got deeper in the game, more active.
Do not dare compare Persona, any Persona game, to this garbage dumpster fire that is soon going to be swept upon us.
And how, as I got deeper in the game, more activities became available to me. And while your bedroom doesn't necessarily change, like you're still in the attic of LeBlanc, you are actually seeing more things become available to you within this space, which is like a visual representation and, in a sense, a gameplay mechanic that engages you with your actual progress in the game. So I like that sort of stuff. We got a little bit of this in Dragon Age Inquisition, as you would see different characters typically hanging out in particular spots throughout the entire hub. Now, this is going to be, I think, a little bit
nice.
Hub. Now, this is going to be, I think, a little bit more intimate sounding because they're going to have their own personal rooms that are going to evolve over time, which I really like.
Yeah, everything is effectively is going to be just a giant sex dungeon. I can't wait for such innovative gameplay. Dude, okay, I'm starting to think that just from hearing this, I'm starting to think that the creators just want to put extra emphasis on the relationships, and that's going to be it.
Always love the more tighter, intimate spots in a Dragon Age.
It sounds like they're 100% going for the brownie points. Oh, look at this relationship that you can have. It's quadruple gay.
Game, I think a little bit of the camp, while it's just kind of out in the middle of the wilderness, everyone huddled around the fire or in different spots of the camp. Like they all have their own place. And to think of that, but it can evolve more, is exciting to me. We also have more here in the terms of romance, where they say, what's interesting, you mentioned romance, the companions also develop romantically, and I'm not just talking about with the character Rook, I'm talking about with each other. There are moments in the game where two of our companions fell in love with each other, and I had to make some pretty challenging choices as it related to the quest we're on, and it broke my heart. It absolutely did. I like this because we also learned with romance in
That sounds a lie, unless you have to sacrifice a character.
Dragon Age Veilguard that anyone is romanceable no matter like your gender. So you can just approach anyone you want, anyone's fair game. I did read online some people believe that this was sort of stripping something away from the characters because now like they're available to anyone. As someone who's not like super crazy.
Yeah, that's definitely stripping away. You cannot make any kind of good romance if everything's supposed to be for everyone. It's just not gonna go enough in depth. It's gonna be bland, it's gonna be dull. And the worst thing that can happen, which I think is gonna most likely happen judging from everything I have seen, is gonna be the fact that, you know how they're gonna handle this. There's gonna be a character, they can be straight, gay, or whatever the hell you please, but their dialogues don't really change, which is gonna make it probably super awkward at parts.
About video game romance because typically I don't think it's done very well. I don't like that when I want to engage with a character. Like I always think of Suvi from Mass Effect Andromeda where I'm like, oh, she's kind of interesting. I want to get to know her better, but I was playing as a male character, so I could not engage in a romance with her. I was like, dang, man, like the one time I'm actually kind of interested, like let's see what's going on here, and I couldn't engage. So I like that it's a little more open and free, but I love that they've kind of incorporated this snooze you lose.
Hmm. They kind of look alike. Interesting.
Snooze you lose game loop here where it's like, hey, if you kind of deny someone and you start to have second thoughts, like they might just move on to someone else and develop a relationship there. So I'm pumped to see how the romance plays out, if it's going to lead to like certain partnerships being forged within your overall alliance and how that's going to impact quests, if at all. They talk a lot about reactivity throughout these companion interactions and how they're kind of changing how quests behave. So I'm really excited to see those sorts of outcomes, because one of the things we're always wondering about with Solus being a main antagonist in this game is how does that interaction with an Inquisitor who romanced Solus go? I'm really curious to see how they handle that sort of scene. Talking about the actual development team and who's on it, McKay says Veilguard blends seasoned veterans with new voices and perspectives, and that's really important for this game. For example, people like former Dragon Age producer Mark Dara, who left the studio in 2021 but is now consulting for Veilguard, and creative director John Epler together have decades of experience at BioWare. They work with people like game director Corinne Bush, who joined BioWare shortly after the launch of Anthem but brings in a love of Dragon Age from the series' 2009 start every day to develop the game we'll be playing this fall. Dara has been attached
Very believable, sure.
to BioWare in some capacity since its early Baldur's Gate days. And when I ask him about the studio's progression from the series to the next Dragon Age, he says it's been amazing. The thing that is so amazing about Veilguard is that the game where we finally said out loud that BioWare's greatest strength is telling stories through characters. If you go all the way back to Baldur's Gate 1, 2, these games are telling stories through characters, but there wasn't any intentionality put behind that. And in this game...
What does that even mean? How the hell do you tell a story through characters but don't put any intentionality behind that? The fuck does that even mean?
We're finally putting that intentionality first and foremost, putting the characters first, building the game around that, and around those character moments, which is really the best way that BioWare knows how to tell stories. He also mentions BioWare's confidence in the game's development engine for Veilguard, which, like Inquisition, uses EA's proprietary Frostbite. Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2 were doing what they could with the technology they had. Inquisition did a good job of using Frostbite respective of the engine, Dara says. But with this game, there's a better understanding of the engines over a lot more time, but also the technology of the hardware that the game is going to be played on moving forward is able to do a lot more stuff.
This sounds so strange, honestly. He's constantly trying to say, hey, old people who worked in the industry and have been a part of BioWare and Dragon Age for a long time matter a lot, and so they are extremely valuable, and they're their skills, knowledge, and all of this stuff is very, very needed for this. But at the same time, new people are good because they're new and they're clueless. This is Man, this is when you try to gaslight someone and you gaslight yourself on accident.
And execute it visually to a degree that just wasn't possible in the past. There's a lot to unpack here from Mark Dara. In particular, I found the technical comment interesting because when you look at what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda, when you look at what happened with Anthem, there was a lot of finger pointing at the Frostbite engine, which for those who don't know is more of like a graphical showpiece kind of engine. Very pretty. You think of DICE and what they're capable of doing with the Frostbite engine and how it hurt something like Dragon Age Inquisition, which felt a lot more fetch questy, a lot more go here and do this. Now, Dragon Age Inquisition was not that bad, but when you looked at what happened with Anthem and Andromeda, we saw the limitations in real time and how it was hurting BioWare. But
yeah, we saw. Sorry, my face is tired.
More than anything, what hurt BioWare, in particular with Andromeda, was restarting the game and rebuilding it from scratch in like a year and 8 months, which was never going to be a great outcome in a modern game development environment.
Okay, listen, the fact that you make a boss or enemy like this where you need to kill the orb that's that's circling it, and only then the enemy is actually, killable. That's not an engine limitation. That's just the fact that the people who made this probably are autistic.
It's interesting to hear that Dara is actually pumping up the tech here. But what's also interesting is his positioning on characters. Look, I view him as one of the OG BioWare GOATs, and that his perspective on where they're at is extremely valuable. Now, I always thought BioWare games were built around their characters, but it sounds like here that this has been a more deliberate effort. Like, instead of these characters joining you, which is mentioned here in this interview, instead of these characters joining you on an adventure you're going on, instead the Veilguard represents everyone in the party. In turn, that creates to me a better understanding of the title change, because it seems very much strongly felt across the entire BioWare team that's speaking out about this game that it's not just really even about you as the main character. Like, you will join stories as they're ongoing because these characters are living in this world, and this world has progressed since you were last in Thetis. So I find it incredibly exciting what he is saying here about, hey, I've worked on what are arguably considered some of the best ever RPGs in Baldur's Gate 2, in Dragon Age Origins, and I've found that this is our most character-centric game. Obviously, I encourage people to remain skeptical if what you saw did not excite you versus what you're reading, but for me, as someone who liked what they saw and then is reading this on top of that, this has me incredibly excited. So don't take it like I'm trying to
Yeah, and this has me incredibly worried.
Convince you that you need to feel the way I do, because some people just interpret people covering game news like that. Continuing on here, we have a little bit more information. They say, with 10 years between Inquisition and Veilguard, BioWare has to balance satisfying longtime fans of the series with newcomers jumping in for the first time. Epler says the studio worked hard to ensure Veilguard is respectful and referential to previous games without feeling like you need to have played Inquisition, Dragon Age 2, or Origins to fully understand what's going on. So,
okay, that's an actual good sentence. That's good. This is the proper way to do it. I like that.
While there are references, there are moments that we have callbacks, it really is its own story, its own continuation with a different cast, with different characters. Historically, Dragon Age has always had a different cast per game, so that gives us a lot of freedom in the terms of what we want to lean on in the past and what we want to really bring in that's new and forward-facing. Dara adds that Veilguard's events play out with a storytelling goal for the future of the series. This is a game which takes the ball that Inquisition had, puts its own spin on it, has its own characters, takes its own direction, and continues to path forward into the future, he says. Look, I'm kind of in the middle on this one because on one hand, I get it. We have to be honest with ourselves. It's been 10 years since the last Dragon Age game. Not many people are freaks like you and I who have stuck with Dragon Age, gone back and replayed them. I'm replaying all of them this year ahead of Veilguard, and we'll do, by the way, retrospective reviews of each title leading into launch, so you'll find that here, so don't worry.
Okay, kind of. Well, freaks are the right way to put it, technically. Anyway, I guess that's it. That was Mr. Matty Plays. Yeah, this does not sell me at all. Admittedly, maybe it's not the worst thing in the universe. That's true, probably. But, I mean, none of this news sounded good. A lot of this was just meh. I don't know. I think still with what we have seen, with what the direction is, there's this it's gonna just be a woke mess, and that's kind of the end of the story. Bye.